Come one, come all. Gather in, children. Let me tell you a story about how to have some fun. Neil Sika, Jordan Angeli, Crew Soccer. The Crew did not have fun, Jordan. At the end of that game, they gave up 2 goals in the last 10 minutes. Early lessons of an MLS campaign where they walk away with 1 instead of 3.
And that's a story, Mr. Rogers. It really is about the Crew responding to what they learned in that last game.
Feed on Wednesday night.
Well, character isn't built when things are tough. It's revealed. And I think that this team has an opportunity after what happened Wednesday and the emotions that they showed, giving up those 2 late goals. Well, what's the true character of this team? Will they come back and have a really good performance tonight? I think that's what everybody in this building is hoping to see. Was it a shot? Was it a cross? Well, this is where the confusion happens. This is Moreira following Tyler Magno essentially. Now nobody is sticking with Amundsen on the far side. That's Luis Diaz's mark. Mensah tries to come over to help out. It deflects off of him. It pops up and over. But these are the difficulties when you have a player like Tyler Magno. He is so engaging, and Moreira does the right thing. Follows him in. It just has to be a trickle effect then from the team. Diaz, drop back into that right back position. You miss one thing and the ball can be in the back of the net. It's really interesting how they're utilizing him. He's playing really tucked in, almost as a dual 10 with Santiago Rodriguez. You can see him there behind the referee. So then it's asking more questions of Darlington Nagbe and Artur, who's picking up that runner, when they also have to be mindful of the 2 holding midfielders. Look at Talles Magno and where he's sitting. That's where it's so difficult to say who's going to go there. Jonathan Mensah is now having to come in. He's asking so many questions of this Crew defense.
Magno.
You could see that developing.
The ball, a magnet.
It's such clever play from Nick Cushing and Tyler Magno here to recognize how the dual 6s play for the Crew, and sometimes they get shifted so far over to one side in a defensive movement that if you keep someone in that half space on the far side, they are wide open. Well, man, he huffed and puffed, and he found his way through the back line here. Mensah playing a great ball, because on the half turn here, Zelarayan has 3 options in front of him. He plays the correct one, which is Luis Diaz on the front foot. And this is where we've seen Cucho be really effective. So many players with Luis Diaz's run now have to drop back. What does that do? It opens up space at the top of the box. And the combination between Luis Diaz and Cucho Hernandez, those 2 have become fast friends, and it is paying off on the field. Great assist by Luis Diaz. Even better goal from Cucho. All the checks to New York City are coming from Lucas Zelarayan because he owns them. He gets this ball at the top of the box, and the audacity to chip it from there up and over Sean Johnson, who stands 6'3", has him sprawled out here, and oh my goodness, Lucas Zelarayan. This New York City team has nightmares of Lucas Zelarayan at the top of their box. But they need an 8. They need someone that goes box to box and doesn't just sit and hold. Morales and Acevedo are two pretty similar players when you're talking about their player profile. So who can be a Keaton Parks? Who can be, at times, James Sands was that. James Sands, played of a handful of positions for this City team. But that is another piece that I think that they're maybe wishing they would have got in this window that just closed.
No doubt.
It's not just those 2 players, it's Aiden Morris as well. And one of the things that I wanted to break down is the Crew have been playing a few different formations, but the tactical flexibility, even within those formations, has been something that I have noticed. This is what I'm talking about, tactical flexibility. So Zawadzki moves into the back line. That gives Aiden Morris the ability to go wide, and then Pedro Santos can come and fill the space. So it's this positional play where if a space is opened up, anybody can fill that. You want certain places on the field to be filled. And now you have your left back and your left winger as the 2 midfield players in this triangle. And Steven Moreira almost advancing as a wing back, which we will see a lot more today. But he gets into the front line. This allows Igbekeme, who is naturally a central midfielder, to play in between the lines. You can see he picked the ball up in between the midfield and the back line. It now connects with Miguel Berry, who's behind the back shoulder of the defender, makes a really good run here and should have done better with this. It's a really good build-up by the Crew. It shows the tactical flexibility even within this 4-3-3, how players can play in different positions. They win the ball back. So that was one of the things that Caleb Porter mentioned, is he wants to be able to have a little bit of fluidity within formation, and to note that it's not just how the team starts. It's that they can go in and out of these different types of tactics within the game, and that was a good example of that.
They're playing really well right now.
And that's one of my favorite things about Will Sands, is the first moment I saw him play for the Crew is you knew that he had something different that could really add to this team. But his recovery pace and his speed is something that is really good too. That's a brilliant touch to get around the defender. He connects, and then watch his weaving run here to continue to be an option. So it's not just, as you said, the overlapping work. It's not just the defensive work. He's a very well-rounded player for his age in his first year. This is just his third start, and this is a guy who doesn't look like it's his third start. And this is what the team needs to do, is build off of that Miami game midweek. And one of the reasons they were so good in the second half is they were compact defensively, so they were allowed to get themselves in good high-pressure situations. To recognize the early cross, I keyed into this, Brett. Here's a play that looks very similar to what the Crew do. So the New England is in the blue, so this would be the Crew. This is Matt Polster dropping in between the center backs. That would be like Nagby or Aiden Morris. These are the two attackers, the front line defensively for Chicago in white. Well, they play this through ball, and then watch on the far side. This is Steven Moreira, potentially. All we're on the far side. If Mueller tucks inside like this, there is going to be space to play this ball to Steven Moreira, and then an opportunity with no pressure on the ball to get runners in the box in this early crossing situation. That's Cucho running in behind. And even as this plays out, Derek Etienne running in behind. These are the types of plays that I think the Crew can really hurt the Chicago team with.
Those two are so special, and when there's no pressure on the ball wide, we showed this in pregame. There's going to be opportunities to pick out the player you want. Lucas knows his target is Cucho. I do feel like their balance of coverage in the last game was much better against Miami. If Mensah went into the midfield, Degenek was in a better coverage situation, because that's what the center forwards are trying to do, and no matter what team you're playing against, to make that back line get a little discombobulated, and when they do, they utilize that space in behind, and if you don't cover well, it's so much easier to do just that. It's like Degenek and Mensah are starting to find their groove when it comes to pressure cover. This is why we want Darlington Nagbe on the ball more often. Here's dribbling Darlington, just making players look foolish. He holds one off, invites pressure back in, little spin away here. You can't take the ball off of him. One of the best dribblers when it comes to pressure on the ball and getting out of situation. He plays the weight on the ball to Luis Diaz.
And we spoke about this a lot in post-game on Saturday. And so I thought, what better way to show you why we're asking more of Darlington Nagbe? Because when he does get on the ball and he goes forward, this team looks different. So this is the Crew in a good mid-block structure. These are their front two, and then their midfield four. What you're going to see here is patience as Chicago builds up. You're going to probably see this tonight too. And then engagement. This almost goes man-to-man here as each player there essentially marks up, even including Miloš Degenek going centrally. And that defensive work puts Nagbe in a little bit of space. And then Nagbe, with a little bit of space on the ball, has to be a cue for players around him to try to get in beyond, because he can pull things off. It doesn't matter if he has space or not. He'll figure out a way to get that final pass. So this one going to Luis Diaz, yes, he can do everything that you need a 6 to do. And there are moments like that where he can add into the attack. But I think this Crew team needs that a little more often in order for them to not only push in these last 6 games, but to continue to get results and then be successful in the playoffs.
Hey, maybe.
Opportunity here, and this is the space that the Crew want to utilize. It's right in front of the back three, because if you get Wanyama and Piet a little bit stretched, there's space for Cucho to do this, and he actually gets more power on that than most players can standing. Nearly bends it into the far post. Pantemis with a good save.
Out of the 14 shots Montreal has compiled tonight, they have 7 on frame.
Right there, the Crew don't win the ball back, but that was showing Luis Diaz would normally just go to that wide player, but there he stayed centrally, cut off Chouanier, who's in the middle of the field. And if he doesn't do that, they break the lines and in Montreal's off. That's the third time we're talking this game just about how much more tactically aware Luis Diaz is.